Hello, and welcome to another episode of Weird Music, the show where we look at the unusual albums that are just different for whatever reason or another. We all know what we're in for by now, I hope. We're looking at anything and everything pretty much, as you can probably guess. Today we're going to be looking at what is a really lovely and special album. It's an album that's both incredibly dreamy and sublime, yet it's also incredibly heavy and really cathartic to listen to. Today we're going to be looking at Like Author, Like Daughter by Midwife. So, start things off. Who is Midwife? Well, Midwife is the moniker for Madeline Johnston, a musician, singer, and songwriter from Denver, Colorado, whose style is self-described as heaven metal. It's an absolutely perfect description for her beautiful style of music. If you listen to it, you'll honestly get it. It feels like, especially on this release, like that sort of heavy metal style, heavy guitars and things. And then it's completely drenched in reverb and effect to the point where it's all sounding incredibly lush and dreamy, more like dream pop. It's sort of bridging the gaps between the two things, I think. It's the kind of music that fills up your headphones right to the brim, and you're left with these existential musings on the self, on relationships with others, how that person perceives you, how you're perceiving them, and just what is going on, why are we the way we are, why do I feel this way, kind of thing. It's beautiful stuff. It's really beautiful. So you've got Madeline's style, which combines really dreamy reverb-drenched vocals. It's sort of similar to Mazzy Star's kind of thing, where it fills up the room, draws you right into the center of everything, and holds you in place for the entire duration of the album. And then this is all backed up by these really fuzzy guitars that harken to kind of metal style, yet it's still really gentle in its own right. This is probably due to the production, which is by Madeline herself and a Tucker Theodore. The two of them just have worked perfectly in getting this album produced. Putting it all together is so good, and their production perfectly expresses the notions and concepts of the albums. It keeps every song just grounded in this cohesive vision, and to me, it's kind of like those really old, incredibly blurry photographs you get of the past, where the details themselves are fuzzy and indiscernible, but the picture itself still expresses all those incredibly layered emotions. You look at it and you still get so much out of it, despite the details not quite being there. They are there, but it's all blurred, it's all messy, it's very peculiar. And so, at the heart of this album, behind all this very peculiar music and stuff, are Madeline's lyrics, which capture that existential nightmare of life that's so incredibly relatable to some people. And when you listen to it, there's something so emotional in how she presents those lyrics too, which, as already said, very dreamy and very heavy. And there's just so many poignant moments on this album too, on the opening track, Song for an Unborn Son, you've got the verse, I am not myself, I'm someone else this time, which is, to me, a perfect existential musing of just, not feeling yourself, you feel so disconnected, you're somebody else entirely. And then you get track 6, Haunt Me. It's got the line, it ends with the line, I can't forget how you forgot me, I can't forget how you haunt me, which is, it sort of reminds me of those people that you never get to see anymore, and you wonder what happened, why are they no longer a part of my life, and what happened. I can never forget them, but you're always still there, kind of thing. It's very, very peculiar, very peculiar. And then of course there's this really sad and very bleak eternal struggle expressed on RTD Part 2, which bounces from I'm ready to die, not ready to die. It's so tragic and full of melancholy, and yet it comes across as really relatable stuff. It's the things we find ourselves playing over and over and over again in our heads, like wondering if we went back, what could we do differently, what happened, why did it happen this way, what's wrong with us, what's wrong with them, etc., etc. Those existential arguments, I guess you could call them. It's weird. Like, I feel like it's stuff where most of us have been there at some point in our life in one way or another. It's very weird, very weird. No, it's relatable and incredibly sad. And this is one of those albums where if you're feeling really raw, really rough, and you just need something to scratch the wound. And a side note, I'm just gonna go off on a tangent here. I mean, I always do this. Some people, they think it's a bit odd when you're feeling really sad and really emotional, and then you listen to emotional, sad music. And as a fan of doing this, I think it's worth explaining. To be fair, like when you're in those moods, listening to music that's relatable and it's in touch with how you're feeling at that particular moment, it comes across as an incredibly cathartic experience. And that in itself is such a powerful and unique emotion to feel, I think. And for me personally, I'm always really grateful for any album that's able to do this. It's able to get across those feelings, that emotion, and it just makes you feel just a little bit less alone and empty, I feel. Like, you're there, you're already feeling sad and rough, so, indulge in it. Like, let yourself feel sad, let yourself experience those emotions, and listening to sad, relatable music is just one of the most perfect ways to do something like that. Like, for me, it's just something I'm always very grateful for. It's an incredible thing. So yeah, confusing, weird, definitely, but I'm, reasonably confident that there's some people out there who can relate to it. Like, I hope so, at least. I hope so. And so yeah, there's not really much else for me to go on about this one. This is, it's such a sad album. It's a very personal album for myself that I can only return to from time to time in my life. And yeah, it's weird returning to it now, but I really wanted to talk about this one and present it on Weird Music for you guys. I want to get this album out there, talk about it, get people to know about this one. Because yeah, it's very weird and unusual. But albums that manage to, for whatever reason, cement themselves in your heart like this are just incredibly special experiences, and you should treasure those things. They're so important to have. And yeah, for me, like, an album like this kind of reminds me of something like Death Consciousness by Have a Nice Life or Carrying Low by Sufjan Stevens. It's perfect expressions of those really heavy melancholy emotions that you as a listener can understand and emphasize. Sympathise with, not emphasize. You as a listener can sympathise with. So yeah, with that, I think we've kind of concluded today's episode of Weird Music. One of the saddest albums we've looked at today. It's rough, it's raw, it's emotional, it's so dreamy, but there's something about it. It's like Madeline is just pulling you right into the centre of her world of confusion and existential melancholy. Just holding you there, and you're there with it, and you can both just experience these emotions together. Like, it's the power of music, especially the power of emotional music. Yeah, hard to explain, whatever. But yeah, I think with that, we're going to conclude today's episode of Weird Music. I hope you've enjoyed this one. I hope you check out Midwife. Madeline has a lot of music available under this moniker. Wonderful singer and songwriter, wonderful at production as well. Like, I am astounded by just how perfect this album sounds. It's very peculiar, but it's exactly what it needs to sound like, if that makes sense. But yeah, with that, I'm rambling. We're going to conclude this episode. I do hope you take care. All the best to you, and bye-bye for now. Goodbye.